everyone. My name is Maryse from the Icehouse. Welcome to another episode of the Icehouse podcast. So with me today, I have got Renae from Civtec. Hi, Renae.
Hi, Renae.
Hi, for those who don't know, please can you explain a little bit about Civtec and what you do there?
Sure. So Civtec is a construction company. We build infrastructure, so we specialise in underground utilities in particular at the moment. So that's telecommunications, water, gas and power. We also do a little bit of light civil, and we have expanded our offering in the telco space, and we're starting to do a bit more mobile wireless and various other connectivity things. We started the company 7 years ago, my husband and I, and it was a man in a van situation. So he was going out to work on the tools and we were going to have a very relaxed lifestyle. We now have just over 260 staff nationwide. We operate throughout the Central North Island. We operate from Christchurch in the South Island and all over the show depending on what the projects require. So our purpose is improvement through connection. So what we do is we're improving people's lives by making sure that they have access to the services they need to do that. But ultimately we have a team of problem solvers. So we see a problem, a client has a problem, and we help them figure it out, and the business has grown off the back of that customer focus.
Wow, that's amazing. So that's serious growth over the last 7 years.
Yeah, it's been quite full on.
Oh,
good,
wow.
Really good.
Yeah, and so why did you guys decide to start your own business?
Interestingly, it was supposed to be a lifestyle choice. So at the time, Shane's a civil engineer. That's his profession, and he was working for another company in the Waikato. I was contracting. My background is in consulting and IT, and we were both pretty full on. An opportunity came up to do a few fibre connections, and the idea was that he could control his workload. We were going to do 4-day weeks. I was only working 4 days a week at that point. We had 2 young children, and so we were going to create a bit of a lifestyle where work supported the lifestyle we were after, and that seemed like a good option to do it. But once we got on there, we're both quite driven, and the opportunity was pretty massive, so we couldn't help but go for it.
Yeah. Oh wow. Was it your first time as business owners?
Yes. So we've always worked in other people's businesses. We've never started a business before, so we've baptism by fire. We very much learned along the way how to make things work for us.
Cool. Well, that leads me nicely into my second question, which is, so why did you, and for those who don't know, Shane's also done Icehouse as well. So why did you and Shane both do the Icehouse Owner Manager program?
Yep. So we were banking with BNZ. We do bank with BNZ. And our banker had invited Shane along to one of the game changer nights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he went along to that, and probably fair to say we were at a point where we were growing really quickly. Wasn't that we were losing control of it, but it was taking on this life of its own that we were starting to get a little bit out of our depth. And I wasn't working in the business. I was still contracting in my other role. So Shane, it was all on his shoulders, and he went along to the game changer night. He spoke to your predecessor when he was there,
yeah,
and had quite a good night, learned quite a few things, and had some good chat. So he came home and he said, "Oh, this program sounds quite good. I think I might need to check it out." And so he did, and for him, that was the first real, shall I say, training, education, professional development piece that he had really done since very early on in his career. So yeah, it felt good for him to go back and do that. So he did OMP 41, which was 2017, and he loved it. Had an absolute blast. He's a very different type of thinker to me. So 2017 was also when I came into the business, and he would come home and tell me about his Icehouse experience and what he'd been learning. And I'm asking a million questions. He's like, oh, I don't know. I didn't ask that question. Oh, I don't know. So we ended up, he said, I think you should go as well, because you'll get a really different perspective on things.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up doing OMP 44 in 2018. And yeah, the business had moved on. We were both working in the business at that point, so we were having different challenges, and there were different opportunities, and the business had grown quite a bit. So we both got very, very different things out of Icehouse. So for us, that was, it was quite a good journey.
So why did you both decide to do it at different times?
Couple of reasons. Cost would have been difficult for us to do it together, both from a cost perspective, from a timing perspective. I mean, it's just all encompassing going into the program. So we couldn't both step out of our business and our lives. We had small children still.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't make sense for us from that perspective. But also, we're so in it together that actually having the opportunity to step out and have your own cohort of people and share your own perspective and learn on your own terms and raise your own issues without having to think about the other person in that space is actually has been really valuable for us.
Yeah, we do encourage that. We do get a lot of husband and wives who are both interested in the owner manager, and having to explain to them that it is not just a business journey, but it's also a personal journey, as well as, not just a 5-month program with the Icehouse. It actually journeys over 10 months if there's 2 of you that do it on separate cohorts. Plus expanding your network from 24 to 48 is just huge, absolutely huge.
See, Shane, no, we can't imagine having done it together. That wouldn't have been right for us. But I know another couple that did it together, and they loved it and couldn't imagine not doing it together. So I guess that it's really personal preference, but we got a lot out of it individually.
And after you finished the program, were there any significant changes that you implemented into the business?
Yep. Lots.
Any that you can share.
Yeah. So when Shane came back, so I guess to give some context, when Shane came along to his OMP, we probably employed about 50 people. We were operating in one region, and we were doing one type of work. So he came back with some big lofty goals around customer diversification and what our structure needed to look like to be able to level up for the next step in growth. So those things we executed, and we have brought in some external people. We have diversified our customer base, and we did quite a bit of work around who we wanted to work with, and that has paid dividends over time, because that was a really important decision for us to make. So then for me, when I came a year later, those things were already engaged, and so a lot of what I did was an extension of the back of that. So we knew that these few things had really amped it up even within that year. So I probably just took those things a little bit further. When I got to OMP a year later, I think we were sitting at about 150 people. So within that year, we had, or might have been 120, but it was a lot, and we had increased the size of the business a lot, and then it just starts getting a bit exponential. So I guess the sorts of things I did, it wasn't these massive big changes, but it was a lot more clarity around where we were going, how we were going to do it, being able to make the decisions of where we wanted to take small risks and big risks or no risk. Those sorts of things started becoming a lot clearer for me. My team, I probably spent a lot more time thinking about how to communicate with my team and how to get the best out of my team. So we've got a really, really strong leadership team. And well, we've got a really strong team anyway, but our leadership team are quite phenomenal. And part of what I probably recognised coming out of Icehouse too was just setting them up for success and letting them unleash rather than Shane and I carrying the business, because actually we can't anymore. We're not the right people to take everything and carry everything. So having this really strong team and having that horsepower just go and just kind of guiding and leading and helping was something that I picked up and has been quite a big change for us.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. And how many people are in your leadership team?
So last year our leadership team had grown to about 9, and that had been through acquisition as well as a few other things that had happened. And a lot of these people have been with us from early days, so they'd grown with the business as well. We have restructured this year and we've actually reduced that team down to 5 and just changed the structure a little bit. It was getting to a point where it was just getting a little bit big, that people weren't able to have the clarity that they needed, and the decision making was getting a little bit harder. So yes, that's a recent adjustment.
Speaking of recent adjustments, New Zealand and the world has had to adjust to, let's call it an interesting year.
Oh gosh, hasn't it been? Yeah, very interesting year. So COVID, the dreaded COVID.
Yeah.
It was really interesting for us. So we, as I mentioned before, we acquired a business earlier in the year, which meant on the 1st of April, a week into lockdown, we had to take on 85 staff and then stand them down the same day on 80% wages.
Wow.
So not only did we buy a business during lockdown, stand down staff, and have to figure out how to actually transact a business when you couldn't physically be there to check off things. So we were checking off a business via video stream, which I wouldn't recommend it, but you know, it means to an end. And trying to make sure that our new customer that was associated with that business, the key customer with that business, was looked after. So it was a very interesting time. We were an essential service, so it meant that we could work, but we were working at a much reduced capacity. So we were doing about 15% of what we normally do in the North Island and maybe 30% in the South Island.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and
big drop.
Big drop. It was also a really interesting time socially. So for the guys that were actually working, because we were an essential service and we had to keep the fibre going so that people could work from home, we had the police called on our people. Our people were abused by members of the public for being out and not doing their part for the community. So we had a really, that first point of lockdown was actually quite hard and quite tough for our team. You know, people were scared. There was a lot of unknowns. So the way that we worked had to change entirely. The way we protected our team changed entirely. All of our communication bases, all these things that I'm sure all these other businesses out there will be listening to this and going, oh yeah, same. But it was very tough, very challenging. What it did do though is, man, it makes you think different. You had to find ways to carry on and to make things work and to use the tools that you had. We learned a lot about people who were resilient and who weren't, who stepped up and who didn't, which was really interesting and gave us some good understanding of the culture of our business and where it was really strong and where it wasn't. So that first lockdown was quite tough. The alert level changes. We were back to work in alert level 3, very restricted, but we were back to work. And then when Auckland went back to level 3, we don't operate in the Auckland region, so that didn't impact us day to day, but it definitely had impacts on supply chain, our flight scheduling. You know, that changed all sorts of things around how we travelled around the country and whatnot. So COVID has just been, or this COVID period has been a year of constant decision making and constantly being willing to change the decision you just made. So that's probably my sum up of it for us.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So what learnings have you taken out of the year 2020 so far?
Learnings. Well, I'm probably even more passionate about connectivity now than I was at the beginning of the year. I've always been very passionate about our business, but I'm even more so about the service we're delivering because of the impact on people in this changing world. So I definitely learned a lot about that. I learned, you know, they say never waste a good crisis, and I think that once the uncertainty had started to subside, or you became more comfortable maybe with that uncertainty, it's actually amazing what you can do and what you can think about, and the way you can use the opportunity to kind of embed change or look at a situation in a different way and get people along on that journey a bit faster than they probably would have, you know, in normal circumstances. I found that the constant decision making was quite exhausting, and it was really exhausting for our team. So we had to find different ways to support each other and to take care of each other and debrief and actually blow off a bit of steam, because when you're sitting behind a Zoom call, it's a little bit different than when you're sitting down having a coffee or going for a beer to actually have a debrief. So those are probably some of those key things around, I guess, a bit of human behaviour. So passion for connectivity and keeping our good infrastructure to keep our country functioning, but also then the human behaviour aspects of how to get through a time like this were probably two of the big learning areas for me.
Yeah, I learned a little thing around, so you've got your EQ, you've got your IQ, but you've also got AQ, which is adaptability quotient, and it's your ability to adapt to change. And yes, more so this year, everyone's having to adapt to a lot more change a lot more quickly. It's unknown, but again, learning to control the things that you can control and accept the things that you can't, and also plan, replan and replan this year, and constantly communicate that to everyone, and yeah, just so that everyone's, you know, on the same path, everyone's got the same goal, I suppose, but you also understand that there is a need to constantly change because of the uncertainty.
Yeah. Sorry, I can hear myself. We've talked a little bit about not having to get things perfect, and good being good enough at the moment. And so things like, you know, speed over elegance was a phrase that came out quite a bit over this time, because we just had to move so fast. And for a lot of people, the idea of dropping their standards is really hard to get their heads around. And so we've had to make sure that we can manage it in a way that we're having to move fast for all of these reasons, and we know it's not perfect, but we just don't take focus off the imperfections, and we go into proper continuous improvement. So we just keep getting better and better and better, and accept that it's not going to be perfect the first time, but it will get better and better. And that's been quite a mind shift, that getting people to adapt to that way of thinking has definitely been noticeable.
So last question. What learnings or what advice could you give New Zealand business owners this year and going forward?
Oh, that's a really big question, Maryse. I guess,
finish with a bang, you know.
Yeah, totally. So I guess for me, this year's been really tough, and I think that what that's done for people is it's given them either some space or no space to actually think about different things and what they want for their businesses and what they want in their lives. So I would say my key pieces of advice would be, have a really clear understanding of what you're trying to achieve, both professionally and personally, and know that that might change over time, and that's okay, but just keep checking in to see if you are on track, because you don't want to end up in a place that you never intended to be or you don't like. So that would probably be one piece of advice. And the other thing, I don't want to sound too airy-fairy, but is just be really authentic and true to yourself. I think that one of the things we've found in business generally, but has really worked for us this year, is that when I'm really authentic and true to my values and the values of our business and who we are and how we're behaving with our customers and clients and our team, that's where we're finding success, and that's where things are going really well. So as soon as you kind of get a little bit flustered and start deviating from that for some reason, things go south. Well, for me, things go south. So I just kind of check in on that stuff, stay true to me, stay authentic, and deliver with those values in mind. And so far it's all going pretty well, and we've come through this crisis pretty well, very much intact, and probably a bit stronger than we were.
That's fantastic, and that's an amazing way to finish up this podcast. Thank you so very much for your time today, Renae. I know you're a super busy woman. You've got an amazing team behind you. I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at the Waikato Business Chamber Awards. I'm wishing you all the best, and the team here at Icehouse will be wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
See you later.